sea urchins are really important ecologically, and they're actually vilified. They're called the spiny enemy.
The spiny enemy.
The spiny enemy. And
so unfair.
Yes. In fact, there's campaigns to Canberra for the Tasmanians because the sea urchins have gone south. But in other places, the sea urchins are a resource. They're fished.
Yeah.
They're eaten. So it's a bit of a balance. And I think Australia is out of kilter. Absolutely, with the way it's approaching. They're not black or white.
Yeah.
So we have in New South Wales sea urchins, which have been here for hundreds of years, and maybe First Nations people on the South Coast have said that the UN people have said that the South Coast, the urchins are increasing. That probably is right, because climate change, these animals they like it warmer. They certainly didn't want the 13-degree barrier, but as soon as the Tasmania winter started to get warm, happy days.
Yeah.
So they've all gone south. You can't blame them for that.
No.
No, that's right. That's a climate change problem. But at the same time, where sea urchins are native, or endemic, Saltry Islands Marine Park, if we didn't have sea urchins in Saltry Islands Marine Park, we wouldn't have corals. Because the sea urchins eat the kelp that keep the corals happy.
Okay.
So there is, again, swings and roundabouts with respect to where animals live within the ecosystem and what they're doing. And the devil is in the detail.
Okay.
So we won't go into any more detail, I suppose, but the climate change is the elephant in the room here.
Yeah.
Everything is changing.
And sea urchins should not be scapegoated.
No, and neither should crown-of-thorns for the same reason. Just because they've overfished, and we know that the barrier reef right now is undergoing enormous bleaching. Well,
could you tell us, you've just come back from seeing the bleaching.
Yeah.
Could you tell us a bit about that? I understand you dived with your daughter.
Yeah, so my, it's an interesting story. I was going independently with my daughter. She'd be absolutely mortified. But anyway, there you go.
What are mums there for, if not to mortify
well,
their
I was
daughters?
teaching my students, and she was coming up to work with Queensland Parks and Wildlife Service to work with the turtle team. I was teaching my students, and the turtle team said to her, well, the turtle nests are 4 degrees above normal. They're hatching early, and half of these turtle nests are dead, so there won't be anything for you to do when you come up here.
Oh, okay.
She managed to get 2 nests out of 20. And she says, what can I do? I says, well, you can volunteer at One Tree Island, where the University of Sydney has a research station. And so what will you do? Well, there's this terrible bleaching event, and no one seems to be recording it. Go out there and tag as many corals as you can. So she did.
Could you tell us, how do you tag a coral?
So what was really important to know, and my colleagues that are working on how corals die, how they die geologically and by erosion, and how reefs get flattened, to actually be able to document that, you've got to follow the coral from when it was healthy to when it was bleached, and did it recover from that bleaching. So for instance, in 2016, all the corals at One Tree Island recovered, because there was a cyclone in Fiji, which meant the corals went across the Southern Barrier Reef, and the Southern Barrier Reef was saved from a cyclone that hammered Fiji. This year, One Tree Island wasn't so lucky. There was no cyclone. Well, of course, we don't really want a cyclone. But as a result, then the corals started to bleach, and they got paler and paler and paler. We were all up on the reef watching them going paler and paler. And the real trouble is that all of a sudden, it wasn't in the news anymore. It's almost like, oh, it's climate change. What can we do about it? It's almost like people are defeatists. And I thought, we can't be defeatists. This message has to get out there. So I put Aisling, my daughter, on the job, and she had to tag as many corals as possible, because the important thing about coral bleaching is that there's some corals that bleach, the ones that go fast, the ones that live fast and die young, but regenerate, and the other corals that don't bleach, which tend to be long-lived, grow slowly, and you don't want to lose those because they're 100 years old. Some are 10 years old, some are hundreds of years old. So the really important thing when you see bleaching, is it just the normal species that's the most susceptible to warming? In this case, no.
Yeah.
So she tagged as many corals as she could in different varieties, and everything was bleaching, even the species that normally don't bleach. So One Tree Island Lagoon, because we have temperature loggers there, was 35 degrees.
Wow.
In February 2010, it was 35 degrees. February 2024 is 25 degrees. February 2010, it was it was 35 in 2024. 2014, it was 10 degrees cooler, and then it bounced around between 25 degrees to 28 degrees. That's hot. But when we got to 35 degrees, that's just cooking. So obviously the corals couldn't cope with that. We have got crown-of-thorns at one tree as well, but if there's no corals, there's no crown-of-thorns. So that might solve that one, you know. But it's a terrible state of affairs.